as the moderator, correct?
Yep.
Yeah. And then you could do the introductions and take it off from there. I'll stop my screen share. Any of you guys can share your screen. It's enabled that way. So
Okay, great.
And I'll just kind of monitor the mute button. Sometimes people join, they forget, you know.
Yeah.
You know what, Magna? You may end up having to do that since you're the host and I'm a co-host. But if I can't mute them, I'll text you.
I'm kind of losing.
Yeah, she's having a hard time hearing me.
Okay. Jeff, I completely lost you. No, I completely lost you. I just heard, you know what, Meghna, after that I just lost you.
All right, how about now?
Yeah, it's better.
So what I'm not sure is, because you're the host for AI Orange County, I don't know if I can mute people as a co-host. I'll text you if I try to mute somebody and it won't do it, because that means you may have to do so.
Okay. One way to check that is if you just go to the bottom of your bar on the Zoom, if you see the recording and then breakout rooms and 3 dots, you're a host too. If not, okay, I am.
All right, then we should be fine.
So
Okay.
Jeff,
yeah,
you're
otherwise
introducing.
I'm online, so I'll.
Okay. So Jeff, you're introducing the whole event, then it goes to me, or is Meghna going to chime in on behalf of EDI?
No, it will go to you.
So what I'm going to do, just so you can see it, come on, guys. There we go. Jim, I'm going to turn this one on like at 4:55 because that's the intro. So I'll review that. I'll review this. And then I'm going to turn it over to you as a moderator.
Okay.
And Meghna, did you want to say anything? You may not be able to.
No, I'll be completely off cam voice today. Jim is going to run the whole show.
I will tell everybody about Meghna. Okay. Okay. Then I can turn off. I'll introduce the 2 panelists. They've got some slides to share. I can turn off my face, and then my voice is still on, and I'll have them speak and answer different things and talk to different things. Then is there a chat room going on the sidebar?
So yes, and it would be good to, and one thing I could, or you could actually bring it up because you're the moderator, is when you want people to ask questions, you know, do the presenters want to ask them after each of their presentations or wait till the very end?
Yeah, wait till the end.
And they should be joining shortly. I really wanted them to just screen share as well.
Yeah.
And we can just ask them, you know, how do you want to monitor the chat? When I've been the moderator, I would kind of go through, but sometimes the presenters want to do it on their own.
Yeah. Well, what I'm trying to get away from is doing this and leaning in with my big scar head as I'm trying to read the chat room, you know? So, and if there's questions that I think are applicable, I'll ask them during the session. If not, we'll hold it to the end.
Yeah. Okay.
Any idea, has 5 people signed up or 25?
We have between 35 and 40.
Okay.
We have 29 or 30 that actually signed up through brown paper tickets. Then we have all of those wonderful board members who get the link, and we know they're going to attend. We don't end up doing that. So we kind of learned with some people.
Yeah.
You know, 4:58, they're trying to email me. How do I get the link? Well, you register before the day of the program. You know,
Jeff, nothing's changed other than Zoom has been applied to your life, man.
Yeah. And the good thing that we've learned who those individuals are, so we just send it to them automatically.
Well, we did the same thing to Cheryl, so.
Yeah.
So Brian Lane's pretty high-powered dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really wish this was in person.
Yeah, he's And he's a basic guy too. I mean, he's a real comfortable guy to talk with.
Yeah.
Daniel is like talking to a machine gun or listening to one. And he's mellowed, Megan. He used to be even more intense.
Oh, okay.
So, but they're both fine people. We had a good dry run, and so that was good. And then Jamie Intervallo says hello. I talked to her today. She's had nice things to say about you, Megan. So
That's good to know.
Yeah.
We are collaborating on a whole lot of things.
yeah, she's a good egg.
Yeah. I'm planning to meet her in person on Friday. We haven't met yet. It's just been over Zoom.
Sure. So are you driving down? She's coming up.
We are going to search for a midpoint. We'll both drive.
Yeah, good. Yeah, she's great. She's a sharp gal.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there anything that you would like to, as head of EDI, that you want me to put into my preamble?
Nothing. Just ask people to join our committee and just do a general call for an equitable future with everybody's involvement.
Okay. Let me ask you a tender question here. This is where you go hard on concept, soft on people.
How do we want to structure this? Because I know we both have some slides, and I was just wondering, would it be, should I run through mine as quickly as possible? I hope I will go very fast at the end, and then just Daniel, looking at your slides, what you are kind of taking it into is, okay, these are some new mechanisms that are sort of coming into play, and take the conversation from there.
Yeah, absolutely. And the way I saw it, Brian, was when I saw your deck, it was so completely complementary. I didn't show any of our sort of LIHTC affordable stuff. I veered off in the direction of the complementary chunk, which is most of what I'm talking about is naturally occurring affordable housing, or just other ways that are more middle and not perhaps 30% AMI, but to quote Rochelle Mills, who is my hero these days, is we need more of everything everywhere. So, and some of those stuff when I show, it really spins it in that direction and plays with ownership premises and stuff. So I thought they were really complementary.
Okay.
Actually thought I'd be set up better if you went first.
Okay.
So,
yeah, that's kind of what I felt. Same way. So we can do that, and then get into things.
Yeah. So Jeff is going to introduce the whole session. Megan wanted to actually turn this into an opera, kind of like a Hamilton thing, but she thought better of it. She's going to be quieter. Then I'm going to introduce both of you, reading from your bios, and then I'll just say, and then Brian's going to share some slides, then Daniel, and then we're going to pull the pin on the hand grenade and let it go.
Perfect.
Okay, good.
Okay, sounds good.
So what I'll do here in another 5 minutes is I'm going to share my screen. It's just 2 slides. They're AIA requirements. I'll go through those at 5 o'clock because people are still logging on for a few minutes. Get that out of the way, and then I'll turn it over to Jim Wyrick as a moderator. He can go from there. I'll stop sharing my screen, and then what I'm going to do is kind of monitor the mute button. Just to make sure, we get those few people that come in, they forget they're not muted. I can assist them with that.
And so Brian and Daniel, you can each share your slides from your computer.
Yeah, that's good.
We should probably give that a run, Brian. I'm thinking. Yeah.
You want to try?
Brian Lane,
try that
first.
Okay. So I need to share screen. Here we go. So the trick on this thing is first I got to do this, and then I got to do this. Is that showing?
Oh, wow. That's cool.
Yeah, it moves. That's why I can't do that in the PDF, but
that's awesome.
This slide shows better than yours, Daniel.
It's just,
that's fine.
Those are 2 different slideshows.
It's all complement 2 very different things. Yes, exactly.
So I'm going to stop sharing now.
Okay. Daniel, why don't you test drive it?
Happy to. Mine takes 2 clicks as well. Oops, and I can't get it to go full frame.
This is where Megan and
There
I
we
start
go.
singing the theme from Oliver. Yeah.
Oliver.
Yeah, so, okay, so that's what I plan to do. And so that didn't take long to get to that. I just have to remember to click into the PDF and then hit full screen. So,
Okay, great. Awesome.
yeah, awesome. Maybe that'll be
Right.
ready to go just like that when I pull it back up next time. That would be a bonus. So while before everyone's rolling, and Brian, this might not fascinate you too much, but everybody else, the city of Irvine, in which my office is located, is
It's
having
called Irvana.
Irvana, thank you. Yes, and they're aiming to make it better, and they've invited us to participate with them as they frame their new updated housing element. So there is a workshop on Thursday and another one, I think, next week sometime. So it's a rare opportunity to get in there and try to influence policy.
My goodness.
You gotta do
That's
that.
nice.
You gotta do that.
Is John Ganillion speaking with Ron Nestor through the housing committee about this? We've got a meeting next week. I just wonder if they're getting others engaged as well.
That's a great question. I know I promoted it to my entire office, Jeff, so I don't always track who like clicks in. We'll have several folks from the office on tonight, but there you go.
Okay. And then things like maybe even
And you're promoting your firm quite loudly in your background.
Is that Ghosh? Should I take that down?
Yes.
Well,
Yes.
Brian's promoting his cabinet company in his background.
That's a K8 cabinet, by the way.
Well, based
Inspired
on
by
Megana's choice, I will remove my
No,
propaganda.
you're fine. You're
Yeah?
fine.
Yeah, it's okay.
You're
Just-
fine.
Don't you remember Ricky Lake? I mean, she would hold a sign up that said Ricky Lake. So
No big deal.
I usually move it so you can't read the Ian at the end.
Okay, thanks guys for doing this. This is very, very
No
good of you.
problem. Looking forward to it.
So Daniel, you guys are speaking Thursday, April 22nd or 29th?
The 29th is the housing element.
Okay.
Is that where you were asking about? If you, yeah, you can go on the City of Irvine's website and look under housing element update.
Yeah, they have 2 workshops there.
One's in the evening, but I'll be out of town. So
Okay.
And Jeff, are we supposed to remind them to send in their AIA numbers?
I will be doing that. It's noted on the second slide, so
Okay.
I'll read it off. Yeah.
All right. That's great. See, Roberta Jorgensen's on the call and everything. This is great.
just incognito, Jim, apparently.
Well, at least her name is here.
Okay, I'm gonna go mute and turn off my video. And we'll go live.
Can you still hear me, Jeff?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, now the headsets are totally working with the red shirts, right?
That's all
like
I
the
got.
AIA Air Force.
Yeah, I studied Brian when I was in school.
Nice.
Yeah.
I just remember these came like the day, like it was about March 19th. All of a sudden, like there's just a load of these things that came in. And for some reason, I can't wear these things for like more than a couple of hours because my ears just ache. I completely have headphone fatigue.
Totally.
And sometimes I mean to bring the iPhone one in, but I always forget.
Yeah.
I feel a little better. I don't know. I think some of them have different. I mean, for a period, there were some of us. We were multiple people in the office, so like you would hear all this crosstalk, And I think this one, although Daniel, who is here with me, sometimes many people claim they can hear him talking through my microphone. It's a little. I mean, I think the world is we're gonna. I mean, even if you have people coming back to the office, which we're slowly contemplating, is that you're still gonna be doing tons of these Zoom calls, and there's gonna be
Mm.
people talking left and right.
Yep.
You know, so it's
Yep.
interesting.
Nothing more constant than change.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Yeah, there's been some good stuff
Yep.
that's come out of it, but there's also some other stuff not so great.
The big thing is if you're sick, you're staying home.
Yeah, well, that's for sure.
Yeah, instead of, I'll grunt it out a little bit.
Yeah, we just bought one of those temperature things.
Yeah.
You know, to like, so when you come in, you walk up to it, and
Yeah.
boom. So we'll see.
It's called a thermometer.
Yeah, high tech. It's a LiDAR thermometer. It also images your whole face.
Right.
And it builds, and it sends it to the maker, the 3D printer.
So we need a bunch of Daniel
Yeah.
Goodman clones running around
Right.
Danilian.
Mm.
This is so funny. It's so weird because like these things, when they usually start when you're in person, you know, everyone's kind of milling about. But nowadays, it's
Yeah.
like, okay, let's see if everybody's on.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to share my screen, so guys will get that set up. There we go.
Oh. It is fun to watch people kind of join the program. I'm going like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, I haven't
Yeah.
haven't talked to her in a while.
Yeah. Betsy Dougherty, she'll tell you where you swerve off course. She'll let you know after the program, Daniel. Hi,
Hey,
Betsy.
I just want you guys to know that I'm recovering from surgery, so I'm going to be very quiet today.
Okay.
This
Oh.
All right. Bless your heart.
sucks to get old, let me tell you.
Mm. Except for how much you know now, Betsy, that you didn't know before.
But my children still don't think I know anything.
Mm.
Yeah, we still have another minute to go, and I know we've got more people logging on.
Mhm.
And Melody Tang.
Have any of you folks met the mayor of Garden Grove?
It's Garden Groovy.
It is certainly Garden Groovy because their mayor is 28 years old.
Wow.
Yeah, she's really, really interesting.
We ought to have her speak sometime. That might be fun.
I have not.
Yes, she would. A lot of people would really sit up very straight and pay attention when she speaks.
Oh,
I'm
good.
certain.
Interesting.
What's her
If you need a-
angle?
If you need a favor, let me know. Well,
Okay.
she is. Her father was Mexican and her mother was Vietnamese, and she is a millennial who got elected as mayor while living in her car. It just gets better from there.
I think I
guys.
have seen her. I think I've
Yeah.
seen some video of her.
I saw
Yeah.
there was a webinar on Saturday that she was on. And it was like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, I want to have coffee with that girl right there. It was just amazing. So
Very good. Yeah, I'll talk to you later about it, Daniel.
Okay.
I'm curious if maybe we can't do something.
okay.
It is 5 o'clock, and I do see we're having more people join, but I'm going to go ahead and kick this off. so we can get right to the panel discussion. Thank you for attending today's program, A Successful Path to Equitable Housing. For your attendance, you will receive 1.5 AIA learning units. A little housekeeping I need to do here, a description, a panel discussion about the elements necessary to conceive, finance, design, and build equitable housing. The learning objectives are attendees will learn about the design process in creating equitable housing and how to maneuver the Planning Commission. Attendees will learn about governing policies related to creating equitable housing in our cities. Attendees will learn about the design philosophy behind equitable housing as it relates to other multifamily projects. And attendees will discuss elements included in creating equitable housing to make them healthy environments. At the conclusion, would you please, and I know we have some attendees that are from other chapters, so make sure that you email Marilee Edgar, it's right there at the base, include your name, your AIA member number, so your AIALUs can be reported. The reason we ask is it's a little tough for us to locate the members from other chapters, so that's really going to help us out. The rest of you attendees, you all know the drill. You've done this many, many times. Additionally, and so far you all are doing fantastic. Please stay muted. I will check it out. You know, we love our dogs and we love our cats and our kids, but it's good to have them muted so the presenters can go ahead and do their program. There's the chat line, and Jim will go through that with you. That's really it for me. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to our moderator, Jim White.
Thank you, Jeff. Hey, welcome everybody to this afternoon session. It's great to have you here as we climb into the very important topic of housing and some of the options that we have before us to alleviate some of the issues that we as a society are facing. I've got two terrific architects with me this afternoon to have and lead the conversation. I'm going to introduce each of them, and then we're going to go into some of their slides, PowerPoints that they have prepared for our viewing pleasure. First of all, Brian Lane is a principal at Koenig Eisenberg. He's headed up a lot of the firm's award-winning community buildings, housing projects, mixed use and hospitality projects. He builds neighborhoods, and so that's an excellent entree into what we're talking about this afternoon. As you heard Jeff talking about the echo of equitable housing through the description of the LUs. That was highlighted a few years back as Koenig Eisenberg, under Jeff's tutelage, won the 2015 National AIA Honor Award for his 28th Street apartments. For those of you that aren't aware, winning National AIA is huge. So congratulations, Brian, and your firm for doing that. It's tough enough winning in California. It's equally difficult on the national level. Koenig Eisenberg has gone on to win over 170 design and sustainability awards, and they were honored to be Firm of the Year in 2009. But this year, Brian was elevated to the College of Fellows. Congratulations. He gets the F before the AIA. And so that's the highest echelon in our organization. He has a whole slew of projects and has gone through his career over 30 years. What more would you expect from somebody who graduated from Cal Poly San Luis Obispo and goes on to get his master's from Penn? Interesting topic, though. He was a panelist for a topic discussion not unlike this for housing for the homeless in 2016, and then also densifying the residential infill development in 2016 with ULI. So we have with us someone that knows a great deal about the topic. And he will be accented by Daniel Gaiman, a principal at Danielian Associates, forgive me folks, where he champions the multifamily studio and focuses on higher density, multifamily, mixed use projects developments, as well as the issue of attainable housing, which he will address coming forward. He has over 30 years of experience working in a variety of roles in a variety of projects. Got his bachelor's degree out of Cornell, had a cup of coffee at Talbot Theological Seminary. And I remember the evening where he received the President's Award back in 2000 from the AIA Orange County chapter for his work in mentoring and his intern development program. He's a verbal tour de force, so buckle up when we hear from him, everyone. You will be both invigorated and exhausted after hearing from him. So with that, Brian, I think you have some slides to share with us, and then Daniel will go on to you, and then we'll pull the pin on the hand grenade and have a good conversation.
Great. Thank you, Jim. I'm going to see if this will work here. As always, it's always the moment of truth. Is that showing up for everybody? I'm assuming it is. Can someone tell me if that's on screen?
Not yet.
Nope.
Brian.
We don't see anything on the screen.
Well, that's not good. Oh, you know what? I think I know what happened. Let's try this because we have to start with this.
Better.
There we go. Now we just got to get the whole thing up. There we go. How's that? Are we all good?
Perfect.
Everything's
Yes.
up.
Got it. Thank you.
Great. Something's moving. There's a train, all that stuff. Thank you for the introduction. It's great to be here tonight. I'm going to run through actually a number of projects, but I'm going to try and do it very quickly, and only because I just want to give a kind of taste of some of the options and some of the ways you can create neighborhood equity. And we've been around for a while, so we've had a chance to look at a variety of ways to do this. We've had a couple of publications. All of the titles hold great significance for us, but at the end of the day, Architecture Isn't Just for a Special Occasion was a book that came out a while ago, but it still means a lot to us because it really means that when we're talking about equity and housing and things, it's for everyone. It's how to keep it fair, how to balance it, how to get everyone involved. And that involves our, working with a lot of groups of people. This is where it all starts for us at the end of the day. The first little set of projects I'm going to show are actually two projects. And here in Santa Monica, we have an inclusionary policy, and I'll talk about that in a couple of cities, but here it's 20%. We had a very large project, which is called 500 Broadway, which is the orange one, that actually funded a much smaller 64 unit family project. And I'm not going to talk about this one too extensively. This is super high-end housing, but this is what made the other project possible. It is an interesting project in itself. The project has been, like many projects, about 10 years in the making. It's finally under construction. We have a Connect system, and I could talk about this project forever, but I really want to get into the project that project made possible, which is called the Arroyo, which is 64 units of affordable family housing. It's on a site that is nearby, also close to transit, but it was a site that was not loved by the market rate folks. It had a big wash, storm drain coming through the site. Because affordable housing doesn't need as much parking, it made it a lot easier to kind of bridge over parts of that storm drain and create the housing. So I think the takeaway here is that there are always opportunities amongst inclusionary policy, whether it's on site or off, and to create a great project. This next project I think will be interesting to talk with Daniel's slides, because we consider this a missing middle type scale project. This is actually 10 units, but again on a throwaway site, dogleg site, that was almost impossible to build. We were the third architect to come into this project. It has some affordable units in it as part of the inclusionary policy, but the scale and massing is very much kind of neighborhoody, and give you that idea there. This next project is called Belmar Apartments, and this is also kind of a public-private partnership. Very prime site here in Santa Monica. The total project is about 360 units, I believe, somewhere around there, of which half are affordable units. So literally, because the city owned this land, they were able to work out the deal to make this thing and fund a project that was half affordable and half market rate. And we're talking pretty high-end market rate units right next to affordable housing. And if that's not the equation for equity, I don't know what is. I mean, giving someone the same location as someone who has much greater means really does even things out quite a bit. So this is a fairly dense project. But as I was saying, that we've got high-end condominiums. You can see they're built out of concrete. The only difference you can see in the structural system, we're in wood in the affordable apartments on the right. But literally these two projects are side by side. We've got a very diverse population here, and it's 100 yards from the beach. The people that live here and have the opportunity to get into this housing are very grateful. But as well, I think it really makes for a much nicer, diverse population in this area of Santa Monica. Project's got some great open space. This next project is taking you to the whole other end of the spectrum. This is Skid Row. I'm actually looking out of one project into our project across the street called Floor Lofts. This is permanent supportive housing for 98 individuals. Most of them are right off of Skid Row. They're veterans, people with mental illness, and just very low income individuals. You can see the tents down in the bottom of this building. Literally, we were trying to get people. We had a completed building, and the process to actually get them into the housing takes so long that few people are in tents. But anyway, we just finished this. Again, not going to go too much detail on these. The great thing about this project, which was interesting, is that we had a courtyard scheme. We've got a fair amount of open space that kind of winds its way up through the building. This is funded by low-income housing tax credits. There's actually 11 funding sources. The thing that's annoying about this project is it took 5 years to build. And that's for a lot of reasons, which we can probably get into later. Anyway, it's done. There are people in it. The units are good. They're efficient. They're great little studios. And I think this is part of equitable housing. Another equation for affordable housing, historic buildings or old buildings and repurposing buildings. This one happens to be an historic building. It's actually a building by Paul Williams. And so it had some pedigree. There was also a little piece of land on the back. So that's the big part of the equation. Keep your eye on that. We rehabbed the entire building, built a new sliver of a building on the back, and connected the two and created a narrative between them that the community really latched onto. And I think, investing good design in neighborhoods that don't always get good design is another component of equitable housing. And this project is the project that we won a National AIA Honor Award for. And I think that was a big part of the equation of that award. Couple more just inclusionary projects to end here. This is in West Hollywood. This was also city-owned land, about 40 units, just shy of 40 units. This project has, it was at the time designed as condos. They turned out to be rentals when they came on the market, but this project has 8 affordable units within it, mixed within the population in a key location along Santa Monica Boulevard in West Hollywood. So it's really just bringing the same level of opportunity to people that may not otherwise be able to live in this location, and high quality design on top of that. So people feel the pride and the dignity of the investment in them, the investment in their environment, the place they get to live, all those kinds of things, I think become great for this type of housing. This last project, I got one more for this, is also in West Hollywood. Same kind of thing, much denser housing. In one market, this was only 20 units of high-end condos. The development environment crashed, and we came back with a 48-unit project, of which 8 units were affordable units. I think one of the things in housing these days is obviously density. this project has a very tight courtyard equation. It's only 16 feet wide. But I felt really great about this project when it came back to us and became the 48 unit project because we were getting the affordable units into the project. I feel much better producing that kind of housing than big luxury units. Another equation is, things like Metro. Metro has tons of land, and we're doing a project here in Los Angeles at a Metro station. And this was kind of a public, what they call a joint development project with Metro and an affordable developer. And this is 187 units in East Hollywood. It's kind of in CDs right now. And this is really, I think the connection to transit on a lot of affordable housing is also part of the equity of, this is something we all invested in, and probably a great way to get people connected with not only that community of which this transit as an investment is coming and these neighborhoods that are burgeoning, and atop all the other reasons that we were talking about previously about affordable housing and good design and just the opportunity to have environments that are conducive to building your family. Kind of transitioning into our next conversation here, we observe a lot of things as we do these projects, and it's a constant, I don't say battle, but it's something that, we're trying to get great design. We're trying to balance funding source requirements, codes, all those kinds of things, building departments, and you're constantly finding things that may not work so well in the system. So we try and keep our ears up to those things. I maintain a thing called Silly and Stupid Codes. This is a giant spreadsheet that has kind of by every city department things that we think could get better. I share this document with numerous other design professionals here. It actually started when Angie Brooks from Brooks Scarpa called me one day. I was having some trouble. I said, I'm going to start a list. Let's just keep a list. This document's filtered through all levels of the building department here in Los Angeles, as well as other folks. And so, there's those kind of fine tuning and tweaks and things that go on with the way we do business and the way we deliver housing and get it out there more quickly. Then the larger picture, which we also like to get involved with, is how can we start to look at zoning differently and new ordinances that might produce better housing, more housing, the ability to bring people in greater concentrations along services. So this was one ordinance we got involved with. It was called the RAS zone, which effectively doubled the FAR allowed along commercial corridors where you had transit, you had services, all these things, but we only had the ability to build 1.5 FAR. So this is now an option in the city of LA. Unfortunately, it still takes a zone variance to get, but we illustrated how that ordinance might work and what it would be architecturally. Another one that we got involved with is we called it small lot at the time. It's known as the townhouse ordinance, which basically tried to allow you to build fee simple on lots. So we got involved there. That ordinance became very successful, and there were nearly 10,000 of these projects, 10,000 units built under this ordinance. So I guess the takeaway really is that, as you're looking at your own, communities and, people that you deal with, you might see things that could be ways to inject new ways of thinking about housing. And if you get involved, especially with the planning level, it's really helpful to the planners who want to put visualization to potential zoning ordinances, and architects can play a really great role in kind of vetting that stuff and creating these what we call talking papers to get those conversations off the ground. And so with that, I'm going to hand it over to Daniel, because I think he's going to talk a little more about some of the stuff that he's seeing on the radar right now.
Thank you, Brian.
So let me take my share off.
Awesome. Hey, Brian, thank you. That segue at the end was really awesome. So I'm going to launch into first a little philosophical observation. So everybody recognizes this image, right? And it says, please, sir, I want some more. And for those of us who are in the housing advocacy movement, and just about everyone you talk to on the street, everybody wants more housing at the moment. And so we're examining the many different ways that you get to it, and for all different types of people. So Brian, great introduction, beautiful stuff. Whoops. There we go. So the problem, the subsidized housing is wonderful and it's awesome, and we absolutely have to have it because there's no other way to build permanent supportive housing. There's no other way to build housing available to people at 30% AMI and lots of things like that. But the concern at the same time is that it's a drop in the bucket of the numbers that need to be produced. And if we're going to get our arms around this, we need to embrace a whole variety of things. Essentially, my bumper sticker is we need more of everything everywhere in order to get to that point of equitable opportunities for housing. So this is kind of one drop in the bucket, which is essential and needful and really wonderful. This is what we need. And what we're trying to do is, you'll see at the end, very end, I want to talk about some of the ideas that we have in front of us right now. And Brian and I are kind of complementary, is that we're looking at every possible niche and opportunity to create housing that's going to work for a very wide range of people. I just love this slide. This is Los Angeles. And you can see those itty bitty towers there in the distance in a sensational mountain range, and miles and miles and miles of what I call Bungalowville. And the fact is, the single greatest resource for the production of attainable housing in the county of Los Angeles is backyards. So I'm going to speak to that issue a little bit. You know that some laws were passed in the state that made ADUs and junior ADUs legal and by right. Thank you, Scott Wiener. And this has begun to be embraced in Los Angeles. I will tell you this, 2017, City of Los Angeles permitted approximately 450 accessory dwelling units. 2018, it was over 4,000. 2019, the number of ADUs permitted in the City of Los Angeles was the equivalent of 20% of all housing units produced. 1 in 5 housing units produced in Los Angeles in 2019 was an accessory dwelling unit. Okay, why am I so excited about that? Because anything you do, it's a teeny drop as well, but it's scalable. And this is what makes me unpopular a little bit, but it's also possible for people who are not big developers to do this type of work. And I will talk about that a little more in a second. So recently, so a lot of you know about this, that the mayor of Los Angeles issued a challenge for low-rise design ideas. And you'll note my red text on this slide. This concept I'm going to show you, this is not legal today in the city of Los Angeles, right? So the mayor's office sent out a brief asking us for study stuff that wasn't legal. How does that work? And so what that means is from the mayor's office is asking everyone to reach further to figure out how we can really capitalize on this opportunity that exists all around us. So I just want to show you a couple of concepts that we did as a part of that competition, but have led to other things for our office. This is a site that was based on an actual property in East LA. And this is a 50 by 150 lot. And what our premise was, there's a whole bunch of stuff involved in this, is we built a scenario around Tia Rosa, who was the great aunt of one of our Latinx architects who works with us. And we modeled this program on having an existing house nearly paid for in East LA, in which through a community financing mechanism, Tia Rosa could pull the equity out of her house and build a triplex in the back. We chose, the lot is alley loaded, so that gives you a lot of advantages. The idea is that as she was maturing one of the first units produced would be an at-grade accessible ADU, and Tia Rosa would move in there, and then they would remodel the front house, and it would be much bigger, growing from its 800 or so square feet into a more marketable 1,600 or so square feet. What we liked about this was in this Latinx community, Tia Rosa knew a framer, she knew a concrete guy, she knew an electrician, she knew almost everybody it was necessary to know to put together a building crew to do this. So we really tried to focus on the possibility of ordinary families being able to leverage their resources to quadruple the number of doors on a given property. So that was what was the premise behind this. All the units are modestly scaled. They park one per. We took advantage of the alley loaded parking to do that. And from the street, maintain one space, a door both sides, so that you could park another car if you had to, but you could also use it as flex space. And this is the image we use to celebrate what this might be like. And it's this is a quinceañera, of course. And so it's very totally endemic celebration in Latinx communities. And we pictured this project with units like that is about extended family, quite probably. And people kind of rotate through. Our concept was for a family land trust that owned the ground beneath, and the folks who lived in the different units paid rent on the ground lease. And even though they had ownership possibilities for their units, the trust also had a condition that you sold primarily to other family members as the occupancy turned. So we focused not just on the design of the property, but also on the way it could be managed and make more opportunities for ownership and entry-level wealth building for people of color in particular. Just one thing I wanted to point out is because of the parking on the alley and a little bit at the front, we were able to achieve an enormous amount of open space on this site because of that. And it's something that we really looked forward to on this site. Moon is optional. So the mayor's competition also had another opportunity that let you double down on the first scheme. And this is two 50 by 150 lots, and the outside one being on a corner. We chose an actual lot in Southeast LA in order to do this, because we picked alley load because, well, hey, that let us do a lot more green space on the site. On this site, 15,000 square feet, we have 10 dwelling units and a 500 square foot community space. The community space, this one was modeled not after a Latinx community, but a Iranian American community. And it was focused around Maman, who was the sort of matriarch of a family and became the sort of curator of what happens in the makerspace there at the back. This parked one parking space per house, two for the townhomes, which are these guys up in the top right. But again, because of the alley load, we were able to have an just incomprehensible amount of open space on this site. Now, how do we do that? The units are extraordinarily modest in scale. That one bedrooms run from 540 to 640. This is predominantly one bedrooms. And then the community space. And the idea, once again, is as a family land trust and extended family members are able to remain in their neighborhood. One of the great fears of building new apartment buildings is they raise the value of everything. People who are maturing sell their properties so they can pull the equity and move out of the neighborhood, and none of their family members can stay there. So this was deliberately intended to sort of address that issue. And we spent a lot of time thinking about the community space and how it functioned in the neighborhood. Oh, one other thing that we did was, as opposed to needing to have too many services on the site, we literally positioned things on the site in such a way that there was a curb cut for mobile services and goods, because today everything comes to me. I get a food truck, a beverage truck, a fashion truck, I get a salon truck, a dog grooming truck. I've seen a dental truck. So everything comes to me, and we wanted it to be able to relate to this community space. The current view you see there was anticipating a community-based craft fair that we called Etsy Local. So again, neither of those concepts legal right now. but we hope some influence will be due. Those of you who are keeping notes, the AIA, the LA chapter of the AIA, on May 6th, we'll have an evening presentation in which Christopher Hawthorne will present the winners of the challenge. So just if you want to make a note of that. Okay, so what did we learn from that we're approaching other projects with? Well, if you can do it on an infill site, the most common unimproved, horizontally graded residential lot among us these days is 5,000 square feet. So we took the concepts that we had studied in the design challenge and began to look at, well, let's take advantage of the ADU law. So I'll show you two of these quickly. This is our duo concept, which is by right on any single family site in California, basically. If you're in Sacramento, you get more, but well, that's how that works. It's two houses essentially side by side, and from the street, they appear like a single family residence. This is very important. This is not a duplex. This is a primary residence with an accessory dwelling unit attached, less than 1,200 square feet by right by state law, and it has full kitchen facilities, as opposed to, it's not a casita, it's not something that wants to be a living space but can't. It actually is a legitimate living space on its own. And again, so we sexed up the exterior for the concept presentation, but there you go. It's the covered space for the primary residence and a surface space for the ADU, which is what the state law allows. And we said, well, while we're at it, 2 is good, 3 is better. And so this is our troika concept, and it is a primary residence with a built-in junior ADU and a detached ADU. The detached is about 1,000 square feet. The attached junior ADU is 485 square feet. Again, these are absolutely geared toward multi-generational living. Do not have to be. They can also be various forms of rental income, and so that the owner can buy a house that has a unit that provides additional income. And an ADU, almost by definition, is in the attainable housing range. And part of that is, quite frankly, there's a trade-off between, I don't have luxurious amenities, I don't have a bunch of things, but I have a quality, modest living space that comes in at considerably below market rate. Again, shooting for that middle market, not necessarily 30% AMI, but more in the 80 to 120 range. And we need more of everything everywhere. And that kind of looked like that. Upper right is, we envisioned the courtyard between the detached and the attached with an entry, and on that 3-story primary residence, a nice roof deck. So everybody gets private outdoor yards, and it all works together. These are concepts that can be done by much smaller scaled business operations, including family members. I'm going too slow. Now, to go back into some of the stuff that Brian talked about, in other NOAA, naturally occurring affordable housing, these two concepts are very important. The one on the left is ours, the one on the right is Steinberg Hart for Housing Diversity Corporation in Los Angeles. That's under construction right now. That is micro lofts on a transit stop with no parking. That takes advantage of the transit-oriented communities. That, again, delivers a studio in a micro loft for significantly between market rate whole dollar rents on comparable products, right? The one on the left is congregate housing. Some people call it co-living. Similarly, people often will live in co-living who are just starting out because it's what they can afford on a whole dollar rent basis. And so both of these paradigms, they're not for everybody, but we see them emerging as what I call part of the urban ecosystem. So we see them growing in significance as part of the total food chain of accessible opportunities. Think about a congregate housing opportunity as something that if you've been living in mom's basement, you can move into that and it frees up where you were before, potentially for somebody else. I mean, that was not a great example, but things like that happen. Okay, I want to end with this one. So Brian and I are waxing enthusiastic and optimistic about the production of housing and finding any way to do it, whether through government subsidy or other strategies that don't necessarily rely on that, but just rely on people wanting to house others. And of course, it is a challenge, and that's my line is please build more housing, just not here. So there are, all around you, there are opportunities for housing advocacy. Many cities are redoing their housing elements right now because of their regional housing needs assessment numbers, and they're open to many, many ideas. And the time for the architectural, potentially those of us in residential design community to step forward and propose a host of ideas on a host of sites, that time is now. And so I don't mean to be a propagandist, but I really encourage all of you to get involved in housing advocacy to the extent that you can. And I think that's it.
Excellent.
It is.
Thank you. Hey, Daniel, you've talked, you know this there, NIMBY. Tell me about YIMBY.
Oh, thank you. I'm happy to. So everyone knows what a NIMBY is, not in my backyard. I will show you my shirt, which is a message from YIMBY Local. That was, yes, of course, is yes in my backyard. And as I said, it's a housing advocacy group that doesn't focus on one particular element of the market, but rather on approaching and educating sometimes cities and sometimes others in terms of this need. I'll send one quote and then I'll shut up, is again, Rochelle Mills, Innovative Housing Opportunities, said this, is that most people are more likely to advocate for space for their cars than they are for space for their neighbors.
Yep. And here we are.
Yeah, and I don't know if you've ever heard Angie Brooks, she uses the term housing is a human right. So it's, I mean, literally, you know, everyone is entitled to housing as a basic human right. So, I mean, that is top to bottom, you know, and to the very bottom. And that is one that, you know, many people struggle with. I mean, well, they don't struggle with, I think it's just that we are not producing enough quick enough, and we don't have all the mechanisms to catch a lot of the people that are, you know, falling through the system.
So
Brian, I can just respond to that for 1 second.
Yeah.
Is one of the things that I liked about our complementary sort of sides of the issue is ADU law allows the by right production of things, which means it's really quick. Los Angeles has a pilot program of pre-approved ADU plans that have been already plan checked through the city, and it's essentially a counter check to get it for your yard. And there's a speed factor there in ADU that's also really important, because the complexity of the capital stack and so on and subsidized just makes those delivery stages so prolonged. So we want to work the candle from both ends toward the middle.
Yeah, and I'm not sure Los Angeles, I've actually, I was trying to follow up on that a little bit. I'm not sure those are completely plan checked, those designs. I'm, you know, they don't come with like structural and all those other things that you would have to get a permit. So that's the, I think maybe the weak point. I may be speaking out of, you know, class here, but I don't think they have that level of approval. It's not like you grab that package, you pay that architect, you walk to building and safety, and they give you a permit after you pay a fee. That is what it should be, though. That is where we should be headed. And I think hopefully that is, if I was to ask Chris, that would be the intent at some point, that we will end up with things like that. Because as anyone who's an architect out there knows, running through permits is not the easiest process for us as architects. Can you imagine, you know, someone who's uninitiated, what that takes? Yeah.
So Brian, if by some stroke of fiat, you are our new governor, what would be the first policy change that you would make to ease these issues?
Interesting. Well, the first one that just popped into my head, obviously, was one that Senator Wiener tried to get through, SB 50, which I think, you know, got demonized quite a bit. But you know,
you elaborate for those that don't know what you're talking about.
SB 50 was really taking major transit corridors and a certain distance back off of those transit corridors that allowed to have denser development. So, you know, we're not talking about, like I showed you, the RAS zone, which is really was targeted towards commercial lots right off of the transit, you know, the street. We're talking about a certain distance back. So R1 lots, a lot of those R1 lots that Daniel showed in his one overview of Los Angeles off of those major transit corridors would densify. And one thing that I had a term that I've always loved, and I think is just prime for a zoning change, is I call it first lot in. And what first lot in is, off of those transit corridors, what you generally have is you have a commercially zoned lot, then an alley, then you go right into R1, right? So that first R1 lot is tremendously compromised. It's sitting right on a commercial alley 24/7. That lot should not be an R1 lot. That should be a lot where we should be able to make some kind of some zoning that transitions from commercial down to the R1. So if you were to take all of those first lot ins and rezone them to take on concepts that like Daniel was showing you, and I think actually, if we were to get in deeper on this, and I've looked a little bit at that low rise, I think it's more, it's easier for communities to handle if they realize that those concepts would be applied to first lot in. And I think you'd get a little less pushback. I am nervous. I think that the Daniel stuff you show is great. I love the concepts, and I think many of the architects here we'd all jump in on it. But the political climate and the NIMBYs are going to pounce on this thing if we don't find mechanisms to make it something that they can swallow. So I love first lot in. And we can take those plans that Daniel was showing, apply them, actually zone it for that, and apply those projects to those zones right away. So
what was the logic of the opposition against that?
The logic of the opposition is that you're going to put all these people right next to my single family house, and you're going to violate my single family peaceful living. And you're going to put cars there. You're going to put all these other conflicts and things. So anyways, that's the age-old story, right? We can go on and on, but I think my first stroke, if I couldn't get SB 50, it's gonna be called the Bryan Lane First Lot In Ordinance. That's what I'm gonna do.
Very good.
All right.
So, Daniel, it appears, and there's I think a lot of folks on this session here that are involved with housing. See John Denalian there and others. It seems like from those of us that are looking at it from afar or up in the stands rooting for you, it seems like housing is equal parts math, politics, policy, finance, the Rubik's Cube, the community outreach. And by the way, there's architecture involved. So how do you remain patient to get through the hamster course before you let your creative self go?
That's Jim, it's a great question. I have a one-word answer, which is uncharacteristic for me. Conviction. I've discovered something that I like to share with people when I'm starting out on a project with them, and said, over the course of my career, I have developed an unlimited capacity to absorb hostility in public. And it's just that you just take one for the team. And as Brian mentioned, it can be just the things you hear people say, opposing things. A couple of my favorite code words these days are permanent resident. Permanent resident means somebody more than 120 AMI who can probably buy something and stay around your community, and everybody else becomes those people. And I use the air quotes dramatically because you look at things like that, and to the point of this program, we get to confront and challenge. And look, you pointed out we're two middle-aged white guys sitting here talking about how to do housing that's equitable, and we get a lot of attention when we're working in neighborhoods and communities from all sides of the argument. As someone once famously said on the listening sessions for the design challenge, a NIMBY in Watts is different than a NIMBY in Westwood.
Sometimes. I think, one of the other things that I looking at Daniel's schemes he had there is, I think what would be great is not to develop based on square footage. And part of that argument sometimes is math, Like, you know, you go into certain R1 neighborhoods and you see people do a McMansion, right?
Yep.
And it's just this giant house. It's 3,500 square feet. They've built out to every possible extent of the envelope.
And Daniel says we need more of those, Brian.
Yeah, of course. But in reality, and we deal with this all the time because we're always tweaking units and we're always trying to maximize space when we're doing permanent supportive housing. It's not an equation that's based on square footage. It might be a little more on density, but we really know how to make things that are small and that work for people. So like if you tell someone that, you know, hey, this is going to be a lot that's not going to contain a 3,500 square foot McMansion. It's going to be a series of 700 square foot or 650 square foot cubes arranged, and they're going to be broken up and they're going to have this grain of the community. I mean, you can start to maybe engage them. And that's where architects are really great because, you know, we're used to that dialogue, but we also have the visual things that people need to understand it. And a lot of the pushback you see in the internet and everything, it's all text based. It's all people just saying, you know, I don't want to have that happen in my neighborhood. And it's just this kind of dialogue thing. But I think when you get into showing examples, it's one of the powerful things that we have to bring to the equation. And many of the planning departments that I've worked with, you know, the planners are pretty visual people, but I think the architects kind of can bring the next level of, you know, making things that feel like the neighborhood and feel like they're contextual and they fit and all those other kinds of parts. And even the narrative that Daniel was talking about is something I think we can help craft sometimes, which is a good story.
In your projects, after you do the calculus equation, you come up with the forms that you need. How engaged are the communities in taking the solution further from that point, if at all? I'm speaking out of school here, or does it just vary on the community?
That is a good question. I think it does vary on the community, and I think we talked a little bit about this when we were in a call one time. I think it you know, it ranges. I'll give one example. The ADU ordinance, when it was being talked about in the city of LA, there was a lot of talk about whether they should allow it in hillside zones. And so all the people in the Hollywood Hills and all those, they were fighting it like crazy. No way, no how. We don't want these things, fire danger, all that level of stuff. But over in Glassell Park, a lot of folks saw this opportunity to create these mother-in-law units, create these extended family units and things. And, you know, those are hillside zones as well. And there was a lot less pushback from those communities to this ordinance. And so I don't know what that means exactly, but these were people that actually saw an opportunity that opened up to them that enabled them to maybe take the next step up. And so maybe that's why, you know, whereas the other communities, the wealth is established, I've got mine, no one else should get it. That kind of scenario was at play.
And the established wealth and the lack of generational wealth in some of these communities is really the kicker.
Right.
Because it's just, they have to start from ground zero every generation.
Jim, yes, we really tried to grapple with that idea. I mean, there are models out there right now that have, oh my goodness, I don't have the term in front of me, but it's like, it's shared equity kind of arrangements where people move in, and when they can only afford to rent, that they rent for a certain period of time, and the owner of the property sets aside a certain amount of their rental over an extended time frame. I'm talking 18 months, I'm talking like 5 years. And at the end of that, suddenly it's amassed into a pool of money that seems measurable. That measurable amount of money could lead to a down payment on a very modest but ownership opportunity that then leads to wealth building. And it's that sort of I don't want to say out of the box because it's such a cliche, but I want to say it's dreamy. That's dreamy. It's social impact driven ideas, right? And if I can spin that for 1 second, Brian, you may have seen this. I've seen an emerging technique from the social impact investors.
Mhm.
And we're talking to a couple of those right now who are doing, again, I'm a big fan of NOAA, but in this case, non-subsidized attainable housing projects. And there's a whole slew of things that they do that are counterintuitive. They choose difficult sites in terrible neighborhoods, and they build not particularly highly amenitized projects with teeny tiny units, and they lease them at 30% below market. And the people line up around the block to get one of those homes. And you're going, okay, well, that's new thinking. And part of that equation is almost everybody on the team contributes a little bit to the effort. And what I mean by that is even potentially the developer will get a slightly less return on that product. So I see the advent of social impact investing and developing to be a hopefully a tip of a spear that I think is going to have a really profound impact on solving this problem over the next 5 to 7 years.
Interesting.
Yeah, I agree. It's a good angle. And just having done as much affordable housing as we've done, is we know that every bag of money comes with a lot of things, a lot of hoops to jump through. And unfortunately, you know, that's added cost, it's added development time, it's a lot of other burdens that affordable housing has to bear. That's the price you pay. And so I kind of am rooting for the folks that can kind of get out there and do it outside of the system, but have the same, you know, social impact goals in the work they're doing.
So, Brian, and some of the projects you've shown, they're beautiful projects, beautiful objects, if you will. What do you guys do, and what do your clients do to make sure that you're a good neighbor? That, hey, a big, beautiful development has just arrived, but for the folks living next door or 2 doors down, their life's about to change. How do you address that equitable development on the impact of the neighborhood surrounding those projects?
Yeah, that varies on the neighborhood, quite honestly. The one project I showed you in South LA, which was a historic building,
Yeah.
you know, we went out. In all cases, we're always doing community outreach. Almost everything we do is some kind of entitlement. We're always having a community outreach as part of the process. But in that neighborhood, we went out and people they saw this as something that was going to increase the value of their neighborhood. So, I mean, it was not a hard sell at all. I mean, they were just like, bring it on. And, you know, they were saying, I have a brother that had mental illness and he ended up on the street, and they saw that as just a way of, you know, supporting people that may have been even within their own family. They really got all of that, unfortunately. And I think, it's, you know, there's, what is it, the thing about, like, you know, liberal politics doesn't always extend out to, you know, housing politics. You could have some really liberal folks that have a ton of money, but then when it comes to something that affects them personally, all of a sudden all the liberal politics goes out the window.
Yeah,
those people are not great in my book, but I think that, again, it's an engagement process with folks, and some people that maybe just need their eyes opened a little bit about what these communities bring to a more lively, a more diverse, a more interesting community as a whole, as they grow together. So it's probably a bit of a narrative on that level, but I think that each project is a little different in the way we approach it.
Yeah, I think over the last several years, we've all been longing for a return to civic discourse, discourse, just having an exchange of ideas.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the other project we showed was this one here in Santa Monica, where we had, you know, really high end condos right next to affordable units. What happened in that project in the process was there was a whole paseo between the two projects that was developed. This is a thing that's not only open to the residents from, you know, both those communities, but the public as well strolling through that thing. So, you know, if you can weave that kind of public benefit, and benefit to each of the housing types on site, you really are going to end up with kind of a better neighborhood in the end. And hopefully people recognize that, and hopefully they're not going to sue you, you know?
So we've got 4 minutes before people fill out their AIA request to Marilee. Daniel, in the evening, the cities are dark. In the daytime, the suburbs are vacant. They're connected by a freeway. As you're bringing these two elements closer together, what are you going to do with all the land left over when the cars go off the freeway and no longer need it anymore? It's 2220.
That is a great question.
I don't know about that, but it is a question.
I'm processing the question a little bit. What to do with cars? I'll refer back to Rochelle Mills. Is that people would sooner advocate for space for their cars than for space for their neighbors, and it's a really tricky thing. I will share a personal experience. Is that some of the concepts that I showed you today, we have developed based on the sort of prescriptions that come from the state law. We have vetted some of them with the people who actually build that sort of stuff on scale. And those are always really interesting conversations, because it's like, well, you can't do that. It's like, why not? And it's like, well, because to sell this house, you need this. So there's a great deal of, I want to say, education on a generous way and decalcification on a more pointed way that has to kind of take place. And I think the same thing is with cars. I showed 2 of my urban ecology projects, and the micro lofts with no parking at all. Many people just resist that on the sheer premise that they can't imagine living without their car. But there's enough people who don't want one, can't afford one, make a choice to live more nicely than have a car.
Yep.
It is, Jim. And the education part of this is that, okay, it's not for everybody. If you live in, Calabasas or somewhere, you're going to have a car to get where you're going in all probability, but not everybody does, and particularly not in the urban core. And you can see, Brian, I don't know if you've done this yet, but we very recently had a project almost about to break ground, in which we made a second level of parking above grade, flat plate, with a high enough ceiling that it could be remodeled intentionally into creative office space when that phenomenon occurs, Jim, of that the automated vehicles have replaced enough spaces in that parking structure that not only can the space be more attractive than to the outside world, but it can be monetized for the owner of the building. And all of those things work together to continue to produce the stuff that we need. So I don't know if I got your question in there somehow, but I tried.
Yeah, you did. But I got one last question. Brian, this comes from one of your fellows, Betsy Dougherty. How do we fix a system that is so badly broken? Mental health, homelessness, poverty. Brian Lane, you have 60 seconds.
You have 60 seconds. Well, you keep at it. I think you have to have persistence and perseverance. And quite honestly, you have to continue to educate everyone that's coming up behind you. I think it's very interesting how the education system has changed a little bit. I go and crit projects and talk to students in housing studios now, but when I was in school, we didn't have those kinds of projects. We didn't have those kinds of studios. So I think I'm putting this on the younger generation. Education, bringing them along is a big part of it. And hopefully there's a bigger shift that happens. And as we tackle the whole homeless problem, there are a lot more minds being put to this. There's a lot greater depth to the solutions that are out there. So I think we just got to keep pushing.
Well,
sorry.
And Brian, I want to nominate Judge Carter for a Nobel Peace Prize because of what he's accomplished. Is that okay? Look, you have to shelter these people before you can shoo them out of public spaces. And what a profound impact he had on Orange County. And now he's taken that to LA as well.
Put some pressure on.
Definitely. And you know what? And it's amazing how people respond. Brian, do you know the project? It's right there by the rail yards, that the shipping container thing that was designed, constructed, and occupied in 9 months for temporary shelter.
I do know it. And the thing is, you got to take those projects that had this incredible amount of energy put into it and now make it easy for everyone else to do.
Agreed.
Those
totally.
Pilot projects have to become codified in codes that completely support you doing because there's too much brain damage otherwise.
Agreed. And I want to speak to Betsy for a second.
and then we have to close up. Or those of you that are 6 o'clock and need to go to dinner, you're free to leave. Thank you for joining us. Daniel's going to carry on until about 11:15 or so. So
That's
stay
really
on
funny.
flag.
There you
I'll
go.
be super quick. Is
Yeah.
the idea is advocacy. Advocacy at all levels is extraordinarily important. And you see a little, like Brian said, okay, hey, that seemed to work. Yes. And then we go out and as a design and construction community, we advocate for these things, not just to do more design, even though that's great, but we're really talking about housing people. And so when you start looking at it from that perspective, it's like, okay, what can I do? How can I actually aid the forward movement of these efforts and not just get in their way?
Yep. Very good. It's Brian
Thank you.
Lane,
Thank you
Daniel
both.
Gaiman.
That's
Thank
a
you.
tough one.
Yeah, it is a tough one, Betsy.
That's a good
Thank you
one.
two very much.
I'm a member of the generation that was going to change the world, and we've done a really good job of doing that, don't you think?
Yep. Yeah.
You're not
And
going
now
to get a
it's-
judgment from me, Betsy.
That's all on us. Brian Lane, Daniel Gaiman, thank you very much for sharing with us
Thank
and
you.
inspiring us to do better. Everybody have a great evening and go and make good choices. Thank you all.
There you go.
Thanks, Jim,
Thank you.
and thanks for the chapter. Great topic.
Thank you.
Thanks, Betsy.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Good night.